There's a divot in the floor here, so watch when you're approaching.
God, I've never been paranoid about that until just now, Steve.
What, that divot in the floor?
All the differences.
Yeah, well, that one's a decent-sized divot. I would say come around this way in front of the microphone rather than what I just did. All set? You all set?
Yeah, we're good.
Hello, people. Welcome today to the Poetry Center at Medicine for Nightmares, and we've got two fantastic guests. This afternoon, with us are Hunk U2 and Gabrielle Daniels, who both have new books out from Dogpark Collective in Oakland. And our Dogpark crew would be here, but there was a new baby at home that has kept two of them. And the third has, is not feeling well today, but so we have our studio audience here, so thank you for being here. And for anybody out at the, on the internet, welcome. I'm going to just let you know about things that are coming up in the approaching days. And on May 5th, out at the Poetry Center, we'll have Raul Ruiz. And Raul used to work in this space when it was Alley Cat Books, a wonderful young poet and alum of San Francisco State. And Raul will be reading with Zidane Seychelles and Bianca White. And the two of them are students. Zidane is a graduate student and recently moved here from northern Iraq. And Bianca is an undergrad student at State. And that program is called New Voice, and it's run by, selections are made by our student staff. And then 2 weeks from today, we will be back in this space when we're doing a memorial tribute to our dear friend, teacher, beloved Etel Adnan. And we'll have 6 people present who will be talking to Etel and her work and her life. And so I hope you can make it back here on May 14th for that. And so because Caleb Beckwith from the Dogpark Collective is at home with the baby, Caleb has authored like an essay on Hung, and I'm going to read it, but maybe excerpt a little bit. And it is in honor of the publication of Hung Q2's book, The New Bama. Hung Q2's work has always been ahead of its time. His first 2 books, Verisimilitude and Structure of Feeling, both published in the early 2000s, attuned to the particulars of globalization, trade agreements, and capital accumulation that beget the long crisis of 2008. whose true resolutions we are still only starting to see. Now that the consequences of this long crisis have finally erupted into popular consciousness and aesthetic mandates across the U.S., his latest book, The New Obama, is here to offer a clear-eyed look at the first 2 decades of the 21st century and to offer a sober analysis of where we, as a global population, on the cusp of capitalism's belated reorganization for the current century, might be headed. Instead of naive hope or faded pessimism, Hung's work offers the cold comfort of perspective and a quiet reminder that no, our troubles are not novel, even if their most recent expression feels that way to American audiences. Rather, this game of forces has long been at play, and the empire will surely come home before it fades. But it has been fading and coming home for our entire lives, and most of us will keep hanging on as we always have, enjoying ourselves when we can, for as long as we are lucky enough to be able. All this foreboding insight, and somehow the poems are hilarious. Juliana Spar argues that the New Obama helps us, quote, remember that poetry can be both antagonistic to capitalism and wildly funny at the same time. And Jeff Dirksen observes the sly intimacy of this book's many speakers as they lead us through charged linkages with wicked humor. In a recent interview, and I believe this was with Caleb, you can find it at Small Press Traffic's online blog. Tu explains the satire and humor of his work in the language of the anthropologist James C. Scott. These forms of subaltern non-compliance and other forms of suboptimal actions constitute the weapons of the weak, which is why their poems are funny and not. And now a small key for the work you're about to hear. Every poem in the New Obama is a discrete, subject-driven political economic critique. For example, the subject of one poem is the European Union, another is the North Korean ruler Kim Jong-un. As Tu puts it, the idea is to start with the subject, develop it with multiple recurring interweaving threads that ideally result in the starting subject metamorphosed. This knowledge in hand, I invite you to play a little game. As you listen to each poem, try to identify a person, place, or thing, or event that poem might be circling. Grab onto what particulars you can, connect them, and look for patterns without making yourself paranoid. If and when you get a handle, good luck with that, if and when you get a handle on what a poem might be, quote, about, reflect on its humor, disjunctions, and the surprise you feel while listening. Then ask yourself where the transformation might occur and what might be at stake in its reframing. And if you're anything like Caleb, you won't often match the subject with the critique, but the guessing game will get you closer to the play between indeterminacy and fatedness that inform this book's poetics and its remarkable sense of history. And maybe after, you can ask Hung to expand upon the book's preface. It is another key for another day's introduction. So let's welcome Hung Kyu-Tu.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, watch out for that divot.
Oh, you're right, I just felt it. So, I think I need the book though, right? Pardon? The book? Oh, your hand. Thank you. Yeah, that was some introduction and quite an essay, as you say, Steve. But before I begin, I just want to start off with a little apology because I might not be my, same energetic self, and as our former president would describe it, low energy, because as I should have known better, I never should book an 8 o'clock flight. So I want to thank Caleb, Eric, and of course, I'm blanking on her name. Kate, yes, Kate Robinson Beckwith, for doing, for their energy and putting this book together and believing in the work. And of course, I want to thank the Poetry Center for inviting me here. It's been, as many of you know, or some of you know, I haven't been back in 20 years, and it feels like the same, but totally different at the same time. So I'm having a little sort of time warp experience. Let me just, let's see, Face ID. Okay, there we go. I think I'll start, I'll read 5 poems, and if there's time, I'll just conclude with something that's newer. The first one is I think about, is about my favorite, my personal favorite dictator, and it's called The God of Gambling. Send me one. So this is The God of Gambling. 6 hands tell time in Korea, where we agreed to split the difference. Showing Zen-like restraint, Washington will not be goaded, however sincere the threat. Hadn't we internalized a restraining order that made deterrence a household name? When along comes an attention-seeking exhibitionist with an equalizer of his own, changing everything. How sad it is to see a great power revisit the stations of grief, acceptance, the Redeemer. Gary Cooper made a study of tension as the minutes counted down to 0 hour. I seek out the nearest subway station and voila, shelter in place. An exotic dancer shared tips on striptease and empowerment with her followers in waiting. So it wasn't just a restorative act of self-denial, but the precondition for talks. Now imagine a very isolated country with an inaccessible gift shop. And here, poem, and it's called Automation. Our Prime Minister held rehearsals, capital flight, read an insight I was in his spare time, a teenager easily politics, and the menial but beneficial possibilities for asylum seekers. A deported mother shuddered at the possibilities as Mr. Universe and a godlike intelligence placed black and white pebbles on a Cartesian grid until pieces stand out to reveal the end game, but also a new birth, one without the pain of labor. So with this in mind, he set about automating the boring bits of his life. Is this why homebuyers find gray so agreeable? How upflanked but relieved I was to hear radical technologists propose, of all things, a universal income. I remember a particular fireside chat when our elders whispered about the revolution to come. For those elders, cancer was just a handy metaphor for negative growth, if only to put a human face on a rapidly spreading meme. So it would be for Billy Graham to spread the good news. Let the dead bury the dead. Of course, whatever superiority I felt watching a clumsy but teachable robot take its first steps for mankind ends with the unacknowledged knowledge of insecurities to come. Is this why zombies are so relatable? It can be hard to find the right emoji when your coworker has a permanent smiley face. So it would be for Judy Garland to sing Over the Rainbow in perpetuity, becoming a gay icon along the way. Imagine my surprise when I hear self-driving cars are just around the corner. And this next piece is, those 2 former ones were, they're much more narratively coherent and blockier, and this next one is much more sort of free association and looser. It looks looser on the page. and it's called Aerodrome. And when I read this poem, I'm going to be editing it as I read. Not so much that I think that the parts that I'm leaving out are weaker, but I prefer them to be read and not spoken. So. Aerodrome. 1. Double Jeopardy starts off with new categories. What is a peculium? Healing the unseen wounds of war by reliving a video game. The weak are made to speak their weakness for pain. Do you have any questions for me? What a motive is to a dishonest so-and-so drinking honest tea. 2. I'll just say this. It's easy to criticize, but difficult to stop. Aim as good as any for national debt. Let's raise the ceiling to preclude the fight we may never get to view. Pacquiao versus Mayweather. 4. Welcome to George Orwell International Airport declaring a false positive to be a true negative. The ecological disaster averted. I see a black swan covered in tar and feather. Developing countries have a choice. I insist. A parcel of barren desert advertised as a solar farm. 5. Teachers in their underfunded pensions are regularly attacked in scenes from the Cultural Revolution. Poetry can make a difference. The moral equivalent to that amoral what's-his-face drinking feckless tea. 6. Routine comedy as only the miserable could tell it. The Devil You Know, San Diego. Required reading for troops headed to the front, Mary Shelley's Afghanistan. In the female-exclusive world of male Cinderellas. Recommended reading for fans of blood-sucking immortals. Bram Stoker's Capital. 7. Specifically, the superintendent for public instruction and against resentment. 8. We're actually saying the same thing. To slice the cake into sincere halves, which explains why I'm attracted to losers. What may be obvious now is only in retrospect the total absence of women. A Russian scientist and his dog, Nokia. Opposing armies eat their way into the center of the cake, leaving behind an uneaten piece. His dying word, aerodrome. 9. Qualify this statement. I have a 19th grade education in an 8th grade economy. To live out the rest of his dream in an Italian villa haunted by quiet routine. That's Dick Cheney, actually. 10. The Wheel of Fortune starts with a blank phrase. Anarchic reading for any politician lamenting his or her ungovernable state. Plato's California. Any memorial is a monument to editing, a towering figure of speech. 11. As with nature, the higher you go, the less diversity there is. It just stands to reason. Such is the ambiguity of banking that only the bad can redeem the good. Afterward, each parishioner is handed a burning coal. Raised by wolves, the sun reverses the curse for all dogs still in captivity. 12. I'll skip 12, except for this one line. What about the creativity of problems? 13. Spring is in the air, and unlimited minutes are spent praising social media. Everybody has the right to self-defense. Stop resisting. And that last line, if you're reading it at home, you should probably be using your best cop voice and pretend that you're swinging a baton. Let's see, what's next? The title poem, The New Boma. 65. Actually, I spend the preface speaking about where and when and how I encountered that word first. It was I explained it in the preface, but I'll do it brief. A boma is basically a pen or a corral, and it's made of like thorny acacia bushes, and I think it's a Swahili word. I'm not exactly sure, but I heard it first when I was in I think Tanzania. And then also I heard a later revised definition from a safari operator of all people, and she said that she knew what it meant, and that it just meant the village. In other words, like the domestic space. So that's what a boma is, and when I first encountered it, I just was taken by it. And for years and years and years, it was sort of burning a hole in my poetry pocket. And I said, I have to use this word somehow. And I have. So the title is The New Boma. And the subtitle is, or How We Got to And. Ideas impatient. Let me start that over. Ideas patiently germinate out of sight until one day, Brussels sprout. And so for the mid-century moderns, only a fully integrated market could achieve what war repeatedly couldn't: peace. A time-lapse map of just such an idea shows its spread to unsuspecting parochial markets. The domino theory was right after all. Loss of identity and feeling devalued are just some of the possible side effects. In response, a South London dishwasher speaks for immigrants at large. Try doing my job. Like that mid-century Moses coming down from the mountain to see the plan in its entirety would leave us staring dumbly into space. In the end, colonies operated at a loss. Does this mean my youth had been misspent, unduly exercised over a fiscally unsound adventure? What the curators had in mind was to incorporate the ideals of harmony and completeness under Western skies. Input in, output out neatly shows the depth of their design in action. But to see the supply chain in all its complexity would turn museum goers to stone. How comforting it must be for this traveler to hear a familiar voice from home. Tu racista. A chaotic period of a warring state ends, supplanted by a dynastic supermarket. An uncanny comedy of life imitating TV features a middle-aged housewife. I don't like Germans. Refusing to choose, they wanted to be recognized as both. Is this what it means to be finally postmodern? So they would turn their colonial gaze inward. An elusive peace entered into force, creating the new Boma. And lastly, this is a poem about, well, it's not about, well, it is, but it's just called Blackbeards. And if there's time, I'll read a really short piece that I wrote more recently. Blackbeards, where are you? In a galaxy that could even be ours. But to be there is to be enthralled to an empire. There, virtue and commerce go hand in hand. The emperor emerged from his one-night stand with the sun goddess receiving 3 cheers for bonsai, which makes it all the more puzzling when unlikely bands of pious but plucky rebels emerge, determined to reprise an old past. Like when I met an idiot savant traveling on a Kurdish passport. For our conservative rebels, yet to experience a sexual revolution of their own, the object of their desire is for her eyes only. Is this latency the reason their recruitment videos look so pornographic? A compilation of explosive climaxes in quick succession for his eyes only. In a performative act of joy, that savant jumped up and down on the edge of a cliff until he got the perfect shot. Then some hunchback said, "International system," as if our condition was nothing more than a permanent shrug. So the language of enforcement would return to its favorite nostrum, decapitation. Even if it is just a figure of speech. Now, it has to be a shock to the international system when, against a nondescript background, an unidentified man with a perfect Cockney accent took it literally. Not having the stomach for such things, I remember fainting in a theater lobby. Those blackbeards of the Levant ached for a caliphate preserved in amber. So it was an epic, but tiresome struggle, not of swashbuckling rebels, but the very future of entertainment for our eyes only. So, do we have time for a short one? Okay, thank you. I find dedication poems really hard to write, and thus I've never written one. And the person that I'm referring to in this piece later told me that it's probably better just to find a written, just find a piece that reminds you of somebody and just dedicate it to them. But I didn't do that. This time it is for him. So it's called Reading New Work from an Old Friend, and it's after Pasquale Verdicchio. Pouring new wine from an old bottle, black, white, and its difference. You're rash, you should have it looked at. A pickpocketed line, there for the taking, silly. The power of observation acquired patiently, notationally, and cordially. Thoughtful poetry in context given freely, in a cabin or on the hillside, the seasons, candles, so many candles, or at a named piazza, the way it used to be, scene chasers. If pears pair so well with cheese, why keep the secret from you-know-who? Black, white, red, and its resemblance, the crooked banners of fascism. Pride in the British sense. No nonsense. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I'm tempted to bring up the divot in the floor again because this goes well with Hong's poems. In order for the Poetry Center to pay the people at Medicine for Nightmares to use their space, they have to have their insurance company indemnify the regents of the university. And so, so that when I trip on that divot, I can't go after them. Maybe I can because, yeah, exactly. The liability is their major concern. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah. Thank you, Hung, and Gabrielle Daniels. I feel like I've known Gabrielle a long time, but I have not in terms of the length of time. But there are ways in which, when we did get to know each other, I believe it was on social media, and we started how come we have these same references and same, a lot of overlap in the things we were drawn toward. And I, then eventually met Gabrielle here in town at a couple readings, and started to become acquainted with her work. And that work goes back to about the time I first arrived in the Bay Area, the early 1980s. And some of you will recognize this book, This Bridge Called My Back, edited by Cherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa. Tony K. Bambara did the foreword. It came out in 1981. Tan Kankau up front was saying that for a while there, it was like a collector's item, and you had to pay $500 or something to get a copy, but it's a renowned work that has come back into contemporary parlance a lot. And in this edition, on page 76, you can read Gabrielle Daniels' poem Millicent Fredericks. And so I then learned of Gabrielle again through an interesting channel. There was a young poet scholar from Britain named David Grundy, who came to town and gave a talk on Amiri Baraka. And I attended that talk, and we exchanged notes. And then every now and then I get a query on the email from David Grundy, looking for something, usually among Bay Area writers, and something that happened historically. And David has a press called Materials, and I was really delighted to see that there was a book of the selected works of Gabrielle Daniels, collecting poetry and prose from 1975 to 2019, that came out called Something Else Again from the Materials in 2020. And then pretty much in parallel, an American edition came out here in Oakland from Dogpark Collective. And so I will just let you know a little bit about the book. It just, as it says, it has a deep reach in terms of its the decades that it spans, from the mid-'70s up to our present. And it's work of multiple genres. There are essays and works that might be even considered journalistic. There is works of poetry and fiction. And Dodie Bellamy, well, the other thing that where Gabrielle and I crossed paths in a way was just knowing that she had studied in Robert Gluck's writing workshop that was offered through Small Press Traffic back. No. Okay, so how did this go? You did not study in that workshop?
I did not study in that workshop.
Okay.
I was with Bruce Boone.
Oh.
Steve Abbott.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So Bruce Boone and Steve Abbott. Yeah. And then, of course, all of those writers were creating what eventually came to be called the new narrative writing, or the new narrative group of writers, and so forth. And so Gabrielle's work has been collected and anthologized in that regard. And there's a little paragraph on the back of the Dogpark edition that is written by Kevin Killian and Dodie Bellamy when they edited the anthology Writers Who Love Too Much. Gabrielle Daniels' talents spin in every conceivable direction. Her writing continues to investigate and illumine corners of the world often neglected by the white capitalist structures of patriarchy that shapes our lives from birth to death. Daniels' work reveals a history, a legacy, a plan of action for the future. These are stories and poems with the punch of a novel in miniature. Please welcome Gabrielle Daniels. And watch for the divot. So come this way.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for that wonderful little introduction to me and my work. A lot of this work I did when I was younger, far younger. I was in my 20s, and I had just graduated from San Jose State. And some of the love poems that I'm going to read today come from that period when I'm just beginning to know more about love and sex and sexuality and men and white men. And I just wrote a series of poems that later won the Phelan Award at San Jose State in the 80s, in the early 80s. And it was regarding a young man that I was in love with. And he was sort of a researcher. And the work sometimes talks about him being in Antarctica, which is where he was doing his research work for Stanford. And some of it has references to Antarctica, but also I'm beginning to think, too, references to white maleness and the kind of things that happen to some people when they go off into the wilderness, like Theodore Roosevelt did. And there's also a reference to a book called Ragtime. I like Doctorow's book. It was number one on my bookshelf for a while because it was really interesting. I got to know who Red Emma Goldman was. I got to know something about, people who did go exploring and sometimes found themselves and then found themselves wanting as well. So I'm going to read from A Movement in 11 Days. And it's going to start with this. Day is ahead of me, as far as the next hour, the next continent. I can't chase the sun in degrees, minutes, the length of its beams, cross with date lines, walk on water to you. I am sinking like Icarus, deeper blue. I am fixed to this shore, passing the night, missing you. 2, on the return of my poems because they were almost too powerful for me. In my country, I make rain while the sun shines. Whole forests and steam hold up the sky, anchor the earth. There's quickening in the soil, lush breath and strength in species, heavy with birth and rebirth and rebirth. In your country, the heart of Antarctica is already promised for hundreds of years, ringed with winter. Her fingers break off easily, melt in your hand. She reflects the sun, blinding you with her beauty, catches your breath like a little death, leaving slivers shining on your lips. In the austral dark, she lies still, waiting for you. In ecstasy, you cry, Aurora, Aurora. Three, at Mardi Gras. Even if you came back to me, cantering on a white unicorn, with a painted tear for sympathy like thin-cheeked Pierrot, tossing your favors like doubloons, the sun would still set among the next day's ashes. I will celebrate this passion with ketchup and hyssop beyond 40 days and 40 nights. 4, nightmares. I know the March wind carries warning. It pounds at my window at night like a Cossack, with the slant of rain like tears on the cheek of heaven. Run, run from him. But where? Upstream, a suicide with every leap, infertile eggs poured out with the entrails, air foaming at the mouth with the cut of the dam. Downstream, a funnel sucking even the black in the unknown, my long gown trailing like Marley, the weights of the past. With the flood of morning in my eyes, I'm conscious of the surface, the puff of flowers on bare trees, the front door opening for the news. In the path, torn branches rear like adders at my thin ankles. Leaves hang like tired tongues from your silence about me, your silence riding furious on my nightmares. 5, drummer. Drummer is also another name for a salesman. Is it the drummer in your veins skipping beats? There are more towns than ever you avoid, with lonely mothers and young girls you've dazzled with gadgetry beyond the threshold. Caught, you smile. You've never been caught. Like a fish with its heart pounding in its mouth, you won't be eaten or played with. The main streets you've walked, you've envied the shop owners, their expansion of stock, of girth, the attraction of quality. They've settled in one place. There's the jump of alcohol, of smoke, to be the big man among the boys, ready for the third round, bluffing for 2 bits at the flip of a coin. Flip of a card. But somewhere in the middle of the night, that desert, between the thin walls of brief hotels, you curl in a corner of the bed, your head banging industriously. Your legs warp around obliging sheets as if to stretch the city limits, and only the bed springs complain, impatient. 6, father from ragtime. Pieces of you freeze so easily, either the crook of your knee or a patch on your hand. So old is the thawing, the drip drip of the glacier, the suspense as you pull away from the wall to finally face me. This time, I'm not stopping my ears, my heart from beating. This time. You've slept all week with me, It seems you want a fire stoked in you constantly, like doses of patent medicine down the throat. Where my hand comes to rest, you shiver. Something you never did before. You wash, 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 afterwards the stretched skin red. The next day, you complain of the smell of fish behind the draperies in the garden. I wash too, carefully. But the hairs in your nostrils twitch, your eyes dart in all directions to rest on the bad books I read while you were gone. Rich, Lord, Smedley. I thought I wouldn't hide them like pins in my hair. On Friday night, I roast beef for dinner. At the head of the table, you talk about sailors who ate polar bear liver raw and died. I chew slowly, looking down at my plate. The roast is well done, and I want to savor all the juices, the red-brown gravy. You scavenge your food amid your own jokes and rejoinders. The ruin of the roast will be for tomorrow's vegetable soup. Again, you visit my bed, and I think it is early spring, but there is none in your step. I solicitously leave you room, a corner. The house exhales the day and creaks. Oh, you'd been such an explorer. Now your treasures are scattered to the floor. You kneeling before unused tea bags and the curved walrus tooth had the family behind you expectant for more than gold, for more than spoil. Now you want a white blindfold for another journey. You've seen my eyes, well-rounded with my own discoveries. Even the success of minding your business is a flag of encroachment, waving you goodbye. You'd rather grope back along the lifeline to the mothership, sure of the one misstep that would leave you in the waste between us. 7. The ring from a merry-go-round is no prize. I can only touch it, not wear it like a bracelet. Charming loneliness, the only true disease. I must leave it to its marriage with the beam while riding, still paying the carney. Dismounting galloping horses, stampeding elephants, rearing dragons, petrified at each go-round. Fantasizing I'm going places, very merry, grasping the reins, carved onto the saddle, onto the horse, and touch it. Besides, it's brass, could turn green against the skin, one proof against the value of circlets, a hand pressing tight on the forehead. Excuse me, let me say that again. A band pressing tight on the forehead. 8. I'm holding up my end like the hem of my grandmother's dress, looking up to see what connects the legs. And then there was a skip, which I didn't realize until now that I had skipped a poem. I don't know where it is. It's disappeared. But I have number 10, a relationship. What it could be, what it could do for me, it's all my creation. Selfish, perhaps, but I was meant to build castles, go into construction. A formerly male profession, I've found. And last but not least, 11, weathercock. Currents like whispers in the ear, a pull at the feet once swept me. I wasn't free. I wanted my breath taken away by the kiss of a prince, a fast car with the window rolled down, a pirouette. These days, my breasts swell with the rising of warm air. I remember I'm cut from black iron, that I weather well. The house built under me is substantial. I have stored lightning bolts under my wing, and roads I have given direction. Tomorrow, I won't rush to meet you, like the clash of opposites bringing the smell of rain. In my first gaze, there will be two pools, with a single pebble thrown in each for contemplation. I will hold no silhouettes, no shadows in your reflection. I will turn around to see all of you, and I will know where I'm going. Okay. Do I have time for more? No, not that one. I haven't read that particular piece for a long time, so. Love poem for a week in July. I think this came out with Gloria Anzaldua's Mango series of poems, so here it is. One last thing about this. Some of the young men that I met and loved were also seeking in their own way. And some were bisexual, some were already gay and just didn't know it then, and some were straight, but I loved them all. He has a boy's body. When I watched him cross the room, he was smooth, clean. A razor could not touch the fur for the baby. Down, baby. Sharp, narrowed muscles, tight pinpointed, a spurt of growth, and puberty-delayed fire. Cupped ass, white as the moon, you shine on your one-woman audience. Then you hide quickly from my morning love light, slipping in the darkness of your blue jeans, like an asbestos curtain drawn to an early close of my day. And this is another poem from that time. And some of the things that I put in here are coming from, they were just beginning to show more Holocaust films about what happened in the Second World War. There was more of them coming out. And so I was watching that, and I was also, making some connections of my own. So anyway, I know you love me when I peel off my clothes to reveal all that uniformed brown skin, my Scar of David. I'm only your second black woman, and you rave about the first while curling your legs around mine, reliving that brief tryst and paid up dues. I'm not easy to pay back, and there is nothing brief about me. 12 hours my minimum, a week my maximum. My wares are barely on my back. They slip off easily. I don't sell them. I give and get, hopefully, what I need. But you're different, you wormer in your beard, and I wonder how much of my days-old love for you is left for myself when you part from me. No, I'm not going to read that one. I'm going to read some of the newer stuff at the end here. This is called customer service. This was the first customer service job that I had. It was working for a clothing company, which you probably are wearing their outfits right now or clothing right now. I refuse to give the name, but some of these are the experiences that I've had with people in customers calling. And it was the first time when I worked alone at home in Wisconsin. So this is called customer service. Hello, this is my name, but this is not who I am. The clothes are manufactured elsewhere, but I was born here, and so is the smile in my voice for a wage. Our relationship must last only a few moments. We will be lucky if we meet again some future evening. So I'm not your friend, your mother, your brother, or your lover whom you broke up with only a few days ago, and others are watching the clock and listening to know. I will agree only to disagree in my mind, from which I will choose not to disclose, or might if you hit my last nerve, and I send you, not so sweetly, but sternly, to my supervisor. Your taste is not my taste. It's not my color. It's not my size. So if you are at a loss about what to get, buy what I offer from the pop-up list of inducements or not. Decide what you must. Decide, but don't decide just to please me. Speak as clearly as you can. Do not shout Yiddish or Hindi or Spanish at your husband or teenage daughter while speaking into the receiver with me. Thin your Bronx and Alabama accents. Don't rapid-fire dialect. As you would your neighbors, wait until your toddlers are asleep or fed, or simply shut the door so that I can take your order without making a mistake. I cannot wait on you as if my time is all yours, while other customers must hold and hold and hold. I'm not like a servant anticipating the last bite before they can take the plate away. Pulling numbers from you while I hear the slap, slap, slap of shiny pages from catalog after inactive catalog, saved up just for this occasion. Simply and stubbornly, you are unprepared for failure when we are out of what you wanted months ago. Even when you had the money, you are disappointed, yet you keep plowing on for satisfaction. Working with 4 screens, or perhaps 5 at the same time, does slow things up when you change your mind as unexpectedly as a gnat from exchanging items to looking up your size, what wedding gift you purchased from 2005, or to help you forget the dullness of every day as though I'm a lozenge to suck on, a pick-me-up to drain me to the dregs of my shift. Like Klaus, make a list, check it right, and take your own time, especially when you have been afraid to measure yourself for years, or to come out of doors on a stoop or a porch, the last in a neighborhood turned dicey, only to get some sun on your face, a breeze through your souring clothes. I can only imagine, approximate, guess, and hope for the best. And now here's the clinker. Don't think that you can change your luck with me. On the whole cloth, that my voice has strength as well as suppleness and can lift you higher than your woman tonight, and on the cheap, too. If surfaces are all that really matter to you, save it for one of those 1-900 numbers. Okay, I'm going to do two more. And this is dedicated for Yahadi Sisi Say, also known as Khadija Say, artistic photographer, 1992 to 2017. She died in the Grenfell Towers fire that happened in Britain about 5 years ago. And I was touched by her story. When the smoke clears, there are lumps, charred clothing, human meat and bones separating, melding to things that once had other forms and other uses, or turned completely to ash, where there should be people with faces, slumbering between the alarm clock or the newborn's wail. The Bengali argued in corridors and under sheets. This time, their color doesn't divide the neighborhood. Color that barely clads the curling flesh. Was your kitchen your only studio? The bathroom? The wet, shiny photographs hanging on the lines, strung cords across the room like tongues of sepia or monochrome? Holy and native, the tub full of water with squeak toys and sponges in the corners, happening to fall in, wanting to be part of the experience. The kitchen table overwhelmed with pans of chemicals, with the chairs taking up the slack and taping blankets or sheets to the windows to urge artifice in the dark. On a sunny day, bringing pictures into being, making magic with the camera, your mirror. I'll bet your mom was patient when she understood. Her cooking must have bathed the apartment, vied with the aromas of the pots downstairs and next door, wiping the fumes clean with Gambia, as if scrubbing the steps to your door. Magic rising like incense smoke from the cow horn and the amulet medicine and muse. Now every apartment has become an oven that cooked the dreams from everyone's sleep while staying in place, stasis, inertia, torpor, stillness, dwelling in their place. They could not breathe. As she looked down from the 20th floor, sometimes marveling in the view of her city, she was not taken in by that mirage. She and her mother were at Grenfell, that island, by grace, not God's. Around them was 20-pound soap, the suspicions of the coppers, empty, crumbling houses worth more off the market than roofing lives. Amid new modern slapdash, none of her neighbors could afford. Success was coming towards her, its matchless fingers primed for embrace, but she hadn't made it yet. There was no one and nothing to whom she felt superior. She gloried in the next achievement and the next and the next. It was still illumination, lighting every pore. That perfection is what she had created and where she had finished. She was humble before acclaim, overawed even, laughing and smiling like the round child she still was. Her art was not an idol that she worshiped, apart and speechless. She spoke her brilliance from within. Wrongfully arrested, the police kept her cell phone. Though exonerated, they took away her voice to call out. to call for rescue. Once gone are the negatives, the dead ends, the false fronts, the revelations. Gone may be the crowns, yet that fire remains, that fire. And last but not least, Little Richard at sunset. This was before he died, and some of this has to do with his sojourns in New Orleans. The performance is never like the ecstasy of Jesus, 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 sung short and close, like the spin of a 45 played over and over. It's never enough for many. Backstage was the bacchanal, later was the self-hatred, a flagellant in the imperfection that perfect God made. You relapse, recover, relapse. It's never clear from which life you even change denominations, but the flesh keeps talking daily, dryly. Even at a whisper, it remains. And you really don't have to, now that everyone is out and about, being and married, even before time runs out. The dewdrop ends of the world are shuttered, almost meeting the kiss of the wrecking ball, shrugging with age from waiting so long. The perspiration and smoke in the walls, the pee in the toilet bowls, the blood in the sinks, the funk in the keyholes have long since evaporated. Reopened, there will become museums to still more money, the kind that thank you said, not to the lives and time that existed. The edifice will be homogenized and sanitized, sanded and glossed and painted over. When the straights, the grays, the blacks, and the gays, and in between came to savor your lips, the height of your pompadour, the bat of your eyelids, your makeup perfection rivaling that of the finest Black woman in the house, even sweated out. Every interview is the same. You can't or don't want to recall everything in detail, but it's just enough to scandalize and proselytize, never staking out your middle ground, embracing both music and holiness. You come out of nowhere, this time on Christian TV, balding, wheelchair-bound, those wide, wild, seeking eyes lined with mascara are crimped, the whites sung deep and yellowing, a shock condemning who you were and are, and defending yourself against that forever book where everything is never forgotten, never erased, way ahead of time, running out. This is holy language written that you can't even read. Wade before you can pass through those gates. But you can say your name, can't you? You can say your name, Richard, still. Hear your name, Richard, 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 over and over. Just feel Richard get caught up in the light. Richard, one more time, that moment before your fingers met the keys and there was nothing to apologize for. Thank you.
Thank you all.